Okay, so for the past 46 years, Willamette Week has published an anonymous survey where our state capitol's lobbyists and staff members rank and comment on the lawmakers who were part of that year's legislative session. Spicy, I know. Now, they're scored on everything from how smart they appeared to how well-liked they were, because believe it or not, being well-liked does make you more effective in passing bills. Now, is this survey scientific? Barely. Is it steeped in juicy gossip and hearsay? Totally. So today on CityCast Portland, Nigel Jaquist, one of Willamette Week's most no-nonsense political reporters, graciously stoops down to my level for a thorough burn book analysis on this year's legislative session. So go grab your glitter pens. We're spilling a capital-sized cup of tea. It's Wednesday, June 28th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Nigel, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's my pleasure.
This is your first time here, and I just want you to know I'm a big fan. I read all your articles.
Thank you.
Well, this is why it's really funny that you are the man who does this, because I feel like you've created this very professional, very, serious man of journalism, and then you have what might be like one of like the bitchiest articles towards the end of the legislative session, and I adore it.
Sure. Well, to that point, it has always made me a little bit uncomfortable. I think I started doing this in 05 or 07. I can't remember exactly. And it is contrary to everything Willamette Week normally does. Normally, we want to have attributed quotes. We don't use anonymous quotes unless we absolutely have to. And we don't print opinion. And this issue is all about anonymous quotes and opinions. But the readers seem to like it, and certainly my editor likes it. So
it is fun. People love gossip. So overall, how do you think the 2023 legislative session ranked at the Capitol? This is your opinion from what you've heard. Like, what's the general consensus?
Well, it's interesting because prior to the walkout, which started on May 3rd, when Republican senators stopped showing up for floor sessions, I would have said it was going pretty smoothly. I think, you have a new Senate president, a new Speaker of the House, so there were learning curves for both of those people. But I think there was a little bit less rancor, perhaps, than there had been in the past. And, there'll always be problems. There'll always be disagreements. There are major policy bills like the Interstate Bridge Replacement Bill that was stalling and struggling. But I think things were generally okay.
Okay. Well, let's start off with the wins before we get down and dirty. So if from all the ones that you listed, like who do you think was the MVP for the Senate this session?
I guess I would have to say Lieber, Senator Kate Lieber. She's from Portland, Southwest Portland, used to be a prosecutor in Multnomah County, now teaches at Portland Community College. She is the Senate Majority Leader, not only because she had the highest scores, but because she's pretty new. This is her first full term, and I think people are really excited about her. Again, the Senate is a fusty, dowdy institution where things move slowly. The average age is I think the average person is eligible for Social Security. So and I don't mean to be ageist. I just mean that there are a lot of people who've been around for a long time, and they're used to doing things very deliberately. So I think
Well, Nigel, also, I feel like it's the only people who can afford to do this job are the retired.
Correct. And so I think she's got the ability to shake things up a little bit. So she would be the MVP. Clearly, a bit of a surprise in the House to me, frankly, Representative Dacia Graber, who's also from Southwest Portland. She's a firefighter. She works for Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. And I was curious because I don't know her all that well myself, so I talked to a lot of people about her. And I think, again, she brings a level of energy. She kind of rocketed to the top. She's not been around very long, and yet I think people see in her somebody that can work with Republicans, somebody that can work with anybody in her caucus. And the House Democratic Caucus is a pretty diverse coalition of people. So she is one of those people who can get right to the middle of things.
Well, those are the good news. But okay, so let's talk our shit.
Mm-hmm.
Worst ranked representatives and senators. Let's figure out who really, really just made everyone mad. Because I do want to remind you, the listener, that this isn't Nigel's opinion. This is like anonymous voting system within the Capitol. It's like a burn book, if you will. Do you know what a burn book is, Nigel?
No, I don't.
Well, I understand why you wouldn't. You've never been a 12-year-old girl, but a burn book in middle school is like a book that like the popular girls will pass around, and they'll just put really mean things about other people in it.
Okay.
It is like an informal peer review, but with a lot more like childhood trauma.
So the easy place to go with that is the House. So the issue is good, bad, and awful. And this session, we had two representatives who came up with really awful scores, and for different reasons. The first is Representative James Heeb. He's from Canby. He's a Republican. Representative Heeb is a military veteran and works in his family's child care business. He first really came to the attention of the public last year when he got arrested at the Clackamas County Fair. It was in his district. He was wearing a Heeb for House shirt, so he was campaigning. He was smoking a cigarette in a part of the fairgrounds where there was no smoking, and he was asked repeatedly to put his cigarette out, and he refused. So they fair staff summoned police. Clackamas County Sheriff deputies showed up. Representative Heeb was, you can see from the video that we obtained and also from the report that he was visibly intoxicated, slurring his words. He was confrontational. He challenged the deputies to, handcuff me. And as they were cuffing him, they realized he was carrying a gun.
Oh my God!
Under his shirt, and which he did have a license for, but it was a real mess. And he, even as they put him in the car, was confrontational and difficult. And so that was how he was introduced to many people in Oregon. During this session, he did not distinguish himself. He doesn't really have a political background. He doesn't really have much of an agenda. And he got very low scores. But he was not the lowest. Representative Brian.
Yeah, but hold on. Give me one sec. For this guy. You just said Representative James Heeb. He's a Republican from Canby. He is representing constituents in Clackamas County. And one of the lobbyists said, "Clackistan, you've done it again. Another village idiot." And that is how that entry ends with Heeb. And I find that, I mean, that's so hurtful.
Yes. As I said at the outset, I've always felt some discomfort with this issue, and there were, frankly, a lot of negative comments about Representative Heeb, and that's the purpose of this issue is to let readers know what people who are working with these folks every day think. And just to go over the process a little bit more, I want to emphasize a point you made earlier. These are not my opinions. These are so we send out these survey forms, and we sent them this year to everybody who is a registered lobbyist in Salem, hundreds of lobbyists. We sent an equal number to Republican and Democratic staff members who work every day in the building and see these people and know these people. And then I also did many, many phone interviews with knowledgeable people around the Capitol. So there's a ton of input, and it's input from people who are in the building every day, not from me. So yeah, those comments about Representative Heeb were pretty negative, but not the worst. Okay,
let's move on to the worst rated representative for the session.
That was Representative Brian Stout. He's from Columbia City. And just a little bit of backstory. Willamette Week does endorsements every session. And so we would normally interview the Republican nominees for that seat. Representative Stout chose not to interview with us, but we interviewed his opponent and felt uncomfortable with him. So we, by default, endorsed Representative Stout, having never met him. And boy, was that a mistake. So what happened is shortly after Representative Stout won the Republican nomination, and he beat the Democrat in the district quite handily. So he's elected, and not long after he's elected, a woman who had worked for him in 2020 when he previously ran and didn't win, went to court in Columbia County and sought a sexual abuse prevention order against Representative Stout. It's similar to a stalking order. And She argued that he had harassed and abused her when she was working for him, and the judge granted the order. So that meant in January, when the legislature convened, you had a new member who had an open sexual abuse prevention order against him for abusing a female staffer. So that put every woman and, it put everybody in the building in an uncomfortable position. Here's a guy that a judge has deemed sufficiently dangerous to this woman to grant an order. So Speaker Dan Rayfield, who assigns members to committees, said, I will not assign Stout to any committees. I won't subject his fellow members nor committee staff to that. I mean, the clear implication from that was that he should probably think about resigning, because if you can't be on a committee,
then what's the point? Yeah.
Yeah. Committee work is what members are there to do, to deal with policy, to deal with budgets. And so there was a trial during session. It was an ugly, highly detailed trial in Columbia County. The judge not only kept the order in place, but issued a 5-year order against Representative Stout. So that meant that he was like a ghost in the building. You would see him in the halls. He would attend as a spectator committee hearings.
Wow.
He was allowed to speak on the floor, and he did periodically speak on the floor, but he was a member in name only.
One of the lobbyists was quoted saying about him, the kid that nobody wants to sit with at lunchtime. And that just, again, brought back a lot of burn book memories. I was like, oh, that's so cruel.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, if nobody wants to sit with him because they're afraid that, of all the other implications around him, it makes sense. Well, let's take a quick break here. And when we return, we're tackling the worst ranked lawmakers in the Senate. So that was the worst of the worst for the representatives. Do we have any in the Senate?
The two senators to the bottom of our list are Senator Daniel Bonham from the Dalles, who's a Republican, and Senator Winsley Campos from Aloha, who's a Democrat. Their scores were low for different reasons. Bonham they're both in their first term in the Senate, and Bonham had served a couple terms in the House, did pretty well, worked with Democrats fairly well, but he was among the people who was really angry and walked out, and I think that really hurt his scores. He remains, I think, pretty angry. In fact, when he came back, one of his priority bills this session, or priority gestures, which was getting money for a bridge, the Bridge of the Gods at Cascade Locks, which is in his district. The money that had been allocated to that project, $6 million to get it started, was stripped and sent somewhere else. So he's had a tough term. Representative Campos, Winsley Campos, moved up this session. She's by far the youngest senator at 27. She got low scores. I think they represent, more than any offense, they represent the fact that she's just new to the process. So I think her inexperience is the reason that her scores are so low.
I want to quickly say something about these two. Something that stuck out to me in the writing was that this basketball game came up with both of them. And I just thought that was so funny. Again, so high school, where it seems that Bonham, I guess he was kind of aggressive. He broke 2 of his teeth and he bent his back in the contest. And people were just like, yeah, that was a lot. And then another thing that was brought up about Campos was that she was very elbowy. And I don't know why, but that just what is up with that?
The House and the Senate play against each other at the Boys and Girls Club in Salem to raise money for the Boys and Girls Club. And I think, you've mentioned burn book, and you've mentioned, not wanting to sit. It's obvious, I should say, that the legislature is a lot like high school. And these are very ambitious, very proud, very, people who are willing to put themselves out there and suffer the kind of slings and arrows that they got in this edition, but also from their constituents, from the press. So I think putting them all on a basketball court is a great idea. It's a great idea.
Oh my God.
Because that's when they can let some of those emotions and aggressions bubble to the surface. So it's really interesting what happened. I guess Bonham did get these 2 teeth smacked or 3 teeth smacked, and one of the Democrats who was playing is Hai Pham, who's a rookie House member from Hillsborough, and he's a dentist. So, it's like he's like Bonham. I asked Bonham about it. He said, yeah, Hai Pham. And Bonham can be known as a pretty partisan guy. He said it was great to have a dentist there to help, because getting your teeth knocked in is something nobody wants to have.
I want to correct myself because I incorrectly said that Campos was the sharp elbow, but it wasn't Campos. I confused. It was Hartman.
And that's a Hartman who's a rookie representative from Gladstone. You're
Gladstone.
Right. Yep.
But I just remembered that that was a reason why people were just like, I don't know, man. She was really aggressive at the basketball game, and she got low scores because of it. And that just, that's pretty hilarious.
I think part of what I like about this issue is that the people who are watching all the time. So there are lobbyists at that game. When these folks go, that there are constantly social functions. So you're getting a 360-degree view of these people. One thing we didn't get, because they've kind of changed the way people park in the buildings. One of the questions I'll ask when I do the verbal interviews is, well, who drives, Representative Tina Kotek, who's now Governor Tina Kotek, was pretty proud of the fact that she drove a total beater. It was a car that she'd had for like 20 years. It had 1 million miles on it, and that was one of her calling cards. And now the parking structure is secure, so people can't get in to see who drives what, because you want those kind of telling details that lobbyists are aware of. Who's the best dressed, who's the worst dressed, who's always late.
Yeah. My representative got best dressed.
Travis Nelson.
Yes, Travis Nelson.
There's a great picture of Travis Nelson on the floor. He is a very sharp dresser. He wears nice suits. He showed up one day with a nice shirt and tie combination, except the shirt had no sleeves. And I think he works out a lot. He's got
and people are still talking about it, is what I'm hearing, Nigel.
He's got an impressive set of biceps, and yeah.
Okay, so we're like nitpicking, we're talking some smack here, but like what effect do these super low ranked reps or senators have on the session, if anything?
Well, look, a lot of bills pass on the margin, and by that I mean there's 1 or 2 votes either way that need to be your bill needs. It might need a James Heeb. It might need a Brian Stout on the floor. It might need a Farachai Chi. So every member's vote is important when the bills are close. And so, that's why you would think in high school there might be the kids that nobody sat with. They don't have any power. In the building, they still have a little bit of power because there are a lot of bills on which their votes are necessary. And there are many, many bills on which that are bipartisan, meaning they get some Republican votes, some Democratic votes. So really, really important. Each one of these people, even if their scores are low, has a lot of power.
Well, do you have any silver linings, like, something to end on a positive note so we just don't leave speaking a lot of bad?
Well, I do. I mean, I've been around legislators for 25 years, and I think that it's easy to make fun of them, and I don't want people to think that's who I am or who Willamette Week is. I think these people they work really, really hard for extremely low pay. They have to digest massive amounts of information and make hard decisions about policies and budget bills that affect everybody's lives. So it is a thankless task. I mean, the legislative pay is about $34,000 a year.
It's ridiculous.
They meet quarterly for 3 or 4 days. They have a short session every even year. They have a long session every odd year. So it makes it very hard for people to make a living outside of the legislature. And we have some fun with this issue, and people get smacked around a little bit. And yet, for me, I have a tremendous respect for the commitment all of these people make, even the people who get low scores.
Yeah. I also heard that this was the year where both chambers saw like unprecedented diversity in the makeup, record numbers of women and people of color winning seats. But it's also why maybe we had a lot of rookies.
Yeah. No, I think the legislature looks vastly different today from 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and that's a great thing. It's becoming, even with the hard sacrifices people have to make financially, there are a lot of young people, there are a lot of people of color, there are a tremendous number of women, and that's different if you were to go look at the class shots from the 1990s, 1980s. It's basically white guys.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nigel. I appreciate you hanging with us and going through your article, even though, as you stated, it makes you uncomfortable.
Thanks for having me on, Claudia. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And now for your microdose of news. Oregon's minimum wage is getting a bump on July 1st. In Portland, the new minimum will be $15.45 per hour. That's higher than in other parts of Oregon, but all minimum wage earners across the state will all have their pay boosted by 70 cents per hour. And ODOT takes another hit. The $1.3 billion project to widen I-5 in the Rose Quarter is on hold until at least 2026. So is a $550 million widening of I-205 in Clackamas County. The delays come after Governor Tina Kotek chose to hold off on tolling highways until at least 2026. Analysts say the delay could kill the projects as costs rise. For even more local news and events, sign up for our daily newsletter, Hey Portland. We'll throw a link in the show notes. That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. If you enjoyed the show, consider leaving us a 5-star review on whatever pod app you're using. It really does help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.